discussing the addendum for release of liability on assumed loan and a restoration of seller's VA entitlement. What this does is if you are doing a loan assumption, this particular addendum does two things. One, it releases the seller liability on the loan that's going to be assumed by the buyer so that when they walk away, they have no liability. It's all on the new buyer. And also it restores the seller's entitlement for their VA loan so they can go out and buy another property, okay? So let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing you're going to do is put here the 911 address, full, I put of the property. That's going to be city, state, zip code, everything, county. It's always best to put in more than enough, but just an address is going to go here. The full address, let's put that. Whatever that is, it goes here. As you can see, there's like a little cheaty sheet there. All right, and then it's very simple. The A talks about release of seller's liability on the loan to be assumed. So you're going to put a very short amount of time. I would say within 3 days maximum. So we're here, for example, we're going to put within 3 days after the effective date of this contract, the seller and buyer shall apply for the release of seller's liability from a conventional lender, whoever the lender they currently are working with. You're going to go to that lender, make sure that you know what they're doing, and make sure they get the ball rolling to see if they qualify. Or B, VA, a lender whose loan has been guaranteed by VA. Or C, FHA, a lender whose loan has been insured by FHA. Either way, you're going to go to that lender, whatever the type of loan this particular seller has. Talk to that lender, let them know what you're trying to do, and you and the buyer, seller and the buyer, should be working very closely to get the lender and all parties what they need to get this property assumed over to the new buyer. And also, what do they need to do to make sure that the liability of the seller is completely off the table once this goes over to the new buyer. All right. So seller and buyer shall furnish all required information and documents to such lenders above, right? If any release of liability has not been provided by the closing date, meaning, hey, they haven't said that the seller's gonna be released from liability upon closing, then I would go ahead and check this. The contract will terminate and the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. Unless they have some other type of relationship where they're okay with taking the fall just in case something happens, failure to obtain release approval will not delay closing. But if you're protecting your client, both sides, I would always check this one right here. If you're trying to do a loan assumption, and for some reason the loan assumption can take place, but if this person stops paying, the previous owner is still liable. That's not cool. So just go ahead and click that. All right. All right, and then also this right here is restoration of seller's entitlement for VA loans. So we're going to say 3 days after the effective date of this contract, seller and buyer shall apply for restoration of seller's VA entitlement and furnish all information and documents required by VA. Now, if the restoration has not been approved by the closing date, what we want to do is go ahead and select this. The contract will terminate and the earnest money will be refunded to the buyer. Sorry, another option, you're going to check one of these. You're going to check this one. But the other option is failure to obtain restoration approval will not delay closing. Again, we don't want to put anybody at a disadvantage unless this is like a child of the veteran and he's like trying to hook them up or something. Then maybe they would select that. But otherwise, protect your parties. Go ahead and just make sure liability, they get their money back and they don't have any liability as well. So notice, VA will not restore seller VA entitlement unless buyer is A, veteran, B, has sufficient unused VA entitlement, and C, is otherwise qualified. So if the seller desires restoration of a VA entitlement, paragraph A and B should be used, okay? Seller shall pay the cost of securing the release and restoration. Seller's deed will contain a loan assumption clause required by FHA, VA, or any lender. What you're going to do is have those parties, buyer sign, seller sign, and you're all good. Remember, this goes with the assumed the Assume Assumption Addendum. If you have any questions, let me know.